Many view Operation Barbarossa as Germany's greatest strategic mistake in World War II, since because of this operation, the German forces were divided on many fronts, and because of this, they ended up losing the conflict, and that instead of invading the Soviet Union, Germany should have invaded Great Britain first, in order to secure the Western Front and then be able to focus on the Soviets. If Germany wanted to invade the British Isles, 1940 was the time to do it. The British were really demoralized by the surprising German victory on French soil, and of course, the United States' refusal to enter the conflict made them even more vulnerable. However, Germany never invaded the island on a large scale and basically only focused on carrying out air operations to weaken the British. Then they concentrated their forces on the Eastern Front against the Soviet Union, while the Western Front was at a standstill. Conquering the British would have secured the Western Front and would have given them an advantageous position in Africa and against the Soviets. So why did the Germans never invade England? Was it a strategic mistake, or is there really much more behind it? Well, indeed, there were many reasons that explain the German indecision regarding invading England. In fact, the Germans thought about doing this and prepared for a long time for the Amphibious operation in Great Britain. The code name for this operation was Leo Marino Bueno. This operation was never carried out. Although their preparations were extremely intense and the threat of invasion was always present for a long time, was it really used mostly to demoralize the British and cover up the invasion of the Soviet Union? Honestly, when France fell, Germany didn't invade the United Kingdom because it was essentially impossible. The Germans thought that once France fell, the British would make peace diplomatically. However, this never happened, and this situation forced Germany to find a way to end the conflict quickly. The origin of the problems with Operation Sea Lion was the English Channel, this body of water that lies between France and England. It was a natural obstacle that increased the difficulty of a possible operation in the United Kingdom. First, let's analyze an amphibious operation that took place right there, only a few years later. But not to invade the United Kingdom, but to invade France. Operation Overlord was planned for years and was carried out mainly by the United States and the United Kingdom, two of the largest naval forces at that time. In addition, other smaller nations contributed both logistics and troops. The United States and the United Kingdom had recently carried out a successful landing campaign in Sicily, and the United States had carried out many amphibious campaigns in the Pacific. So the Allies had a lot of experience conducting amphibious operations with specialized ships and vehicles for the job. In addition to having air and naval superiority over the enemy, it was so impressive that people say there were 8 Allied planes for every German plane during the landing. However, despite having an overwhelming advantage, the Allies suffered a truly disproportionate number of casualties. And this is because, naturally, carrying out amphibious operations was very difficult. Landing troops and vehicles under fire, then quickly unloading supplies and being able to withstand a very likely counterattack. Along with steady logistics, factors like weather, tide, and geography must also be favorable. Such operations are even harder against a well-established enemy with mines, naval forces, fortifications, and an advanced logistics network. Now, if we look at the German forces in 1940, we find an armed force with no experience in amphibious operations, at least against an enemy as capable as the United Kingdom, makeshift non-specialized landing ships, in addition to a weak navy with a limited number of surface ships to support an operation of such magnitude. The Kriegsmarine had been somewhat disrupted after Operation Vis-a-Vis Funk, the invasion of Norway and Denmark by Germany on April 9, 1940. Even though Norway and Denmark were not at war, they did not have a competent army and were completely taken by surprise. The Kriegsmarine lost 1 cruiser, 2 light cruisers, 10 destroyers, 4 submarines, and, in addition, 21 transport ships. These were really substantial losses for the Kriegsmarine, and this bad situation could not be solved in the short term, since Germany had rather limited shipbuilding capabilities compared to those of the Allied forces. Therefore, the Kriegsmarine did not have the capacity to provide the necessary naval support for a landing operation of such magnitude. and any hypothetical amphibious operation would be repelled by the superiority of the British Royal Navy. Germany had experienced paratrooper divisions totaling over 45,000 men. But paratroopers alone cannot cause much damage in enemy territory. They excel at disrupting enemy troops or capturing key objectives such as a port. But without heavy weaponry and transportation to move quickly, they are vulnerable to the defenders' response. And even if they took an important port, bringing in armored troops and logistics would still be difficult, because the ships had to get past the British Royal Navy. Really, if the Germans managed to land, they would only have to face about 200 tanks that could actually put up a fight against the panzers, since the Commonwealth lost most of its armored vehicles in France. And what about the 600,000 British soldiers who were ready to fight at that time? Actually, most of them were civilians with very little training, and they had a hard time facing a professional army like the PERFMAC. British ground forces were weaker than the German ones. The real challenge was actually reaching the island, landing, and maintaining a steady flow of supplies. In 1940, basically, Germany just focused on further demoralizing the British. Between July and October of 1940, the Battle of Britain took place. Germany carried out large-scale air raids on England, mainly aiming to weaken the British military industry and, above all, British bases. Beyond targeting infrastructure, the main goal was to weaken the British enough to push them toward negotiation. No high command thought an amphibious invasion could succeed until the Royal Air Force was neutralized. Although they came close, Germany did not achieve its objectives. Up to that point, the air battles over England were the largest air battles that had ever been seen. Most efforts shifted to the Eastern Front against the Soviet Union. The defeat in the Battle of England was also Germany's first defeat in World War II. This defeat meant that a few years later, the Americans used England as a base to invade Normandy. Therefore, Germany fought on two fronts simultaneously, which clearly led to its defeat in 1945. So, to sum up, Germany never invaded the United Kingdom simply because it didn't have the capability to do so. Many people view Great Britain as a weak opponent compared to the powerful German army. This simply reflects the widespread British belief at the time that the Luftwaffe was unstoppable and invasion was imminent. In the end, it all turned out to be just propaganda and simply widespread fear. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.